Lolo Enki TV.
The Law of One, Book 2, Session 48. April 22, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. We communicate now. Questioner, could you tell us of the instrument's condition and if she is improving with time? Ra, I am Ra. This instrument's vital energies are improving with time, as you measure it. This instrument's physical energies are less than your previous asking. Questioner, thank you. If you, Ra, as an individualized entity were incarnate on Earth now with full awareness and memory of what you know now, what would be your objective at this time on Earth as far as activities are concerned? Ra, I am Ra. The query suggests that which has been learned to be impractical. However, were we to again be naive enough to think that our physical presence was any more effective than that love light we send your peoples and the treasure of this contact, we would do as we did do. We would be, and we would offer ourselves as teach learners. Questioner, my lecture yesterday was attended by only a few. If this had occurred during a UFO flap, many more would have attended. Since Orion entities cause the flaps, what is Orion's reward for visibility in that they actually create greater opportunities for the dissemination of information such as this information at those times? Ra, I am Ra. This assumption is incorrect. The flaps cause many fears among your peoples, many speakings, understandings concerning plots, cover-ups, mutilations, killings, and other negative impressions. Even those supposedly positive reports which gain public awareness speak of doom. You may understand yourself as one who will be in the minority due to the understandings which you wish to share, if we may use that misnomer. We perceive there is a further point we may posit at this time. The audience brought about by Orion-type publicity is not seated by seniority of vibration to a great extent. The audiences receiving teach learnings without stimulus from publicity will be more greatly oriented towards illumination. Therefore, forget you the counting. Questioner, thank you. That clears up that point very well. Can you tell me how positive and negative polarizations in fourth and fifth density are used to cause working in consciousness? Ra, I am Ra. There is very little work in consciousness in fourth and in fifth densities compared to the work done in third density. The work that is accomplished in positive fourth is that work whereby the positive social memory complex, having, through slow stages, harmoniously integrated itself, goes forth to aid those of less positive orientation which seek their aid. Thus their service is their work, and through this dynamic between the societal self and the other self, which is the object of love, greater and greater intensities of understanding or compassion are attained. This intensity continues until the appropriate intensity of the light may be welcomed. This is fourth density harvest. Within fourth density positive there are minor amounts of catalyst of a spiritual and mental complex distortion. This occurs during the process of harmonizing to the extent of forming the social memory complex. This causes some small catalyst and work to occur, but the great work of fourth density lies in the contact betwixt the societal self and less polarized other self. In fourth density negative much work is accomplished during the fighting for position which precedes the period of the social memory complex. There are opportunities to polarize negatively by control of other selves. During the social memory complex period of fourth density negative the situation is the same. The work takes place through the societal reaching out to less polarized other self in order to aid in negative polarization. In fifth density positive and negative the concept of work done through a potential difference is not particularly helpful as fifth density entities are, again, intensifying rather than potentiating. In positive, the fifth density complex uses sixth density teach learners to study the more illuminated understandings of unity, thus becoming more and more wise. Fifth density positive social memory complexes will choose to divide their service to others in two ways. First, the beaming of light to creation. Second, the sending of groups to be of aid as instruments of light such as those whom you are familiar with through channels. In fifth density negative, service to self has become extremely intense and the self has shrunk or compacted so that the dialogues with the teach learners are used exclusively in order to intensify wisdom. There are very few fifth density negative wanderers, for they fear the forgetting. There are very few fifth density Orion members, for they do not any longer perceive any virtue in other selves. Questioner, thank you. I would like to take as an example an entity, starting before birth. who is roughly high on the seniority list for positive polarization and possible harvestability at the end of this cycle and follow a full cycle of his experience starting before his incarnation, which body is activated. The process of becoming incarnate, the activation of the third density physical body, the process as the body moves through this density and is acted upon by catalysts, the process of death, and the activation of the various bodies so that we make a full circuit from a point prior to incarnation back around through incarnation and death. You might save one cycle of incarnation in this density. Could you do that for me? Ra, I am Ra. Your query is most distorted, for it assumes that creations are alike. Each mind-body-spirit complex has its own patterns of activation and its own rhythms of awakening. The important thing for harvest is the harmonious balance between the various energy centers of the mind-body-spirit complex. This is to be noted as of relative import. We grasp the thrust of your query and will make a most general answer stressing the unimportance of such arbitrary generalizations. The entity, before incarnation, dwells in the appropriate, shall we say, place in time-space. The true color type of this location will be dependent upon the entity's needs. Those entities, for instance, which, being wanderers, have the green, blue, or indigo true color core of mind-body-spirit complex will have rested therein. Entrance into incarnation requires the investment or activation of the indigo ray or etheric body, for this is the form maker. The young or small physical mind-body-spirit complex has the 7 energy centers potentiated before the birthing process. There are also analogs in time-space of these energy centers corresponding to the 7 energy centers in each of the 7 true color densities. Thus in a microcosm exists all the experience that is prepared. It is as though the infant contains the universe. The patterns of activation of an entity of high seniority will undoubtedly move with some rapidity to the green ray level, which is the springboard to primary blue. There is always some difficulty in penetrating blue primary energy, for it requires that which your people have in great paucity, that is, honesty. Blue ray is the ray of free communication with self and with other self. Having accepted that an harvestable or nearly harvestable entity will be working from this green ray springboard, one may then posit that the experiences in the remainder of the incarnation will be focused upon activation of the primary blue ray of freely given communication, of indigo ray, that of freely shared intelligent energy, and if possible, moving through this gateway, the penetration of violet ray intelligent infinity. This may be seen to be manifested by a sense of the consecrate or hallowed nature of everyday creations and activities. Upon the bodily complex death, as you call this transition, the entity will immediately, upon realization of its state, return to the indigo form maker body and rest therein until the proper future placement is made. Here we have the anomaly of harvest. In harvest, the entity will then transfer its indigo body into violet ray manifestation as seen in true color yellow. This is for the purpose of gauging the harvestability of the entity. After this anomalous activity has been carefully completed, the entity will move into indigo body again and be placed in the correct true color locus in space-time and time-space, at which time the healings and learned teachings necessary shall be completed and further incarnation needs determined. Questioner, who supervises the determination of further incarnation needs and sets up the seniority list for incarnation. Ra, I am Ra. This is a query with 2 answers. Firstly, there are those directly under the guardians who are responsible for the incarnation patterns of those incarnating automatically, that is, without conscious self-awareness of the process of spiritual evolution. You may call these beings angelic if you prefer. They are, shall we say, local or of your planetary sphere. The seniority of vibration is to be likened unto placing various grades of liquids in the same glass. Some will rise to the top, others will sink to the bottom. Layers and layers of entities will ensue. As harvest draws near, those filled with the most light and love will naturally, and without supervision, be in line, shall we say, for the experience of incarnation. When the entity becomes aware in its mind-body-spirit complex totality of the mechanism for spiritual evolution, it, itself, will arrange and place those lessons and entities necessary for maximum growth and expression of polarity in the incarnative experience before the forgetting process occurs. The only disadvantage of this total free will of those senior entities choosing the manner of incarnation experiences is that some entities attempt to learn so much during one incarnative experience that the intensity of catalyst disarranges the polarized entity, and the experience thus is not maximally useful as intended. Questioner, an analogy to that would be a student in college signing up for more courses than he could possibly assimilate in the time they were given. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, Could you tell me how the various bodies, red through violet, are linked to the energy centers, red through violet? Are they linked in some way? Ra, I am Ra. This shall be the last full query of this working. As we have noted, each of the true color densities has the 7 energy centers and each entity contains all this in potentiation. The activation, while in yellow ray, a violet ray intelligent infinity is a passport to the next octave of experience. There are adepts who have penetrated many of the energy centers and several of the true colors. This must be done with utmost care while in the physical body, for as we noted when speaking of the dangers of linking ray orange-yellow circuitry with true color blue circuitry, the potential for disarrangement of the mind-body-spirit complex is great. However, the entity who penetrates intelligent infinity is basically capable of walking the universe with unfettered tread. Is there any brief query before we leave this instrument? Questioner, just if there is anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact? Ra, I am Ra. All is well. As we have said, this instrument is weak physically and continued work times will lengthen this weakness. The continued contact also aids in the continued climb in vital energy of the instrument as well as the integration and vital energy of the group as an unit. The choice is yours. We are pleased. All is well. You are conscientious. Continue so. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, my friends, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai. The Law of One, Book 2, Session 49. April 27, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We communicate now. Questioner, would you please give us a reading on the instrument's condition? Ra, I am Ra. It is as previously stated. Questioner, I was wondering, in a previous session you had mentioned the left and right air tones, the left and the right brain somehow being related to the polarities of service to self and service to others. Could you comment on this? Ra, I am Ra. We may comment on this. Questioner, will you go ahead and comment on this? Ra, I am Ra. The lobes of your physical complex brain are alike in their use of weak electrical energy. The entity ruled by intuition and impulse is equal to the entity governed by rational analysis when polarity is considered. The lobes may both be used for service to self or service to others. It may seem that the rational or analytical mind might have more of a possibility of successfully pursuing the negative orientation due to the fact that in our understanding too much order is by its essence negative. However, this same ability to structure abstract concepts and to analyze experiential data may be the key to rapid positive polarization. It may be said that those whose analytical capacities are predominant have somewhat more to work with in polarizing. The function of intuition is to inform intelligence. In your illusion, the unbridled predominance of intuition will tend to keep an entity from the greater polarizations due to the vagaries of intuitive perception. As you may see, these two types of brain structure need to be balanced in order that the net sum of experiential catalyst will be polarization and illumination. For without the acceptance by the rational mind of the worth of the intuitive faculty, the creative aspects which aid in illumination will be stifled. There is one correspondence between right and left and positive and negative. The web of energy which surrounds your bodies contains somewhat complex polarizations. The left area of the head and upper shoulder is most generally seen to be of a negative polarization, whereas the right is of positive polarization, magnetically speaking. This is the cause of the tone's meaning for you. Questioner, will you expand on the positive and negative polarizations in general and how they apply to individuals and planets, etc.? I think there is a correlation here, but I'm not sure. Ra, I am Ra. It is correct that there is a correlation between the energy field of an entity of your nature and planetary bodies, for all material is constructed by means of the dynamic tension of the magnetic field. The lines of force in both cases may be seen to be much like the interweaving spirals of the braided hair. Thus positive and negative wind and interweave forming geometric relationships in the energy fields of both persons, as you would call a mind-body-spirit complex, and planets. The negative pole is the south pole or the lower pole. The north or upper pole is positive. The crisscrossing of these spiraling energies form primary, secondary, and tertiary energy centers. You are familiar with the primary energy centers of the physical, mental, and spiritual body complex. Secondary points of the crisscrossing of positive and negative center orientation revolve about several of your centers. The yellow ray center may be seen to have secondary energy centers in elbow, in knee, and in the subtle bodies at a slight spacing from the physical vehicle at points describing diamonds about the entity's navel area surrounding the body. One may examine each of the energy centers for such secondary centers. Some of your peoples work with these energy centers, and you call this acupuncture. However, it is to be noted that there are most often anomalies in the placement of the energy centers so that the scientific precision of this practice is brought into question. Like most scientific attempts at precision, it fails to take into account the unique qualities of each creation. The most important concept to grasp about the energy field is that the lower or negative pole will draw the universal energy into itself from the cosmos. Therefrom it will move upward to be met and reacted to by the positive spiraling energy moving downward from within. The measure of an entity's level of ray activity is the locus wherein the south pole outer energy has been met by the inner spiraling positive energy. As an entity grows more polarized, this locus will move upwards. This phenomenon has been called by your peoples the Kundalini. However, it may better be thought of as the meeting place of cosmic and inner, shall we say, vibratory understanding. To attempt to raise the locus of this meeting without realizing the metaphysical principles of magnetism upon which this depends is to invite great imbalance. Questioner: what process would be the recommended process for correctly awakening the Kundalini, and of what value would that be? Ra, I am Ra. The metaphor of the coiled serpent being called upwards is vastly appropriate for consideration by your peoples. This is what you are attempting when you seek. There are, as we have stated, great misapprehensions concerning this metaphor and the nature of pursuing its goal. We must generalize and ask that you grasp the fact that this in effect renders far less useful that which we share. However, as each entity is unique, generalities are a lot when communicating for your possible edification. We have two types of energy. We are attempting then, as entities in any true color of this octave, to move the meeting place of inner and outer natures further and further along or upward along the energy centers. The two methods of approaching this with sensible method are first, the seeding within oneself of those experiences which are attracted to the entity through the South Pole. Each experience will need to be observed, experienced, balanced, accepted, and seated within the individual. As the entity grows in self-acceptance and awareness of catalyst, the location of the comfortable seating of these experiences will rise to the new true color entity. The experience, whatever it may be, will be seated in red ray and considered as to its survival content and so forth. Each experience will be sequentially understood by the growing and seeking mind-body-spirit complex in terms of survival, then in terms of personal identity, then in terms of social relations, then in terms of universal love, then in terms of how the experience may beget free communication, then in terms of how the experience may be linked to universal energies, and finally in terms of the sacramental nature of each experience. Meanwhile, the Creator lies within. In the North Pole, the crown is already upon the head and the entity is potentially a god. This energy is brought into being by the humble and trusting acceptance of this energy through meditation and contemplation of the self and of the Creator. Where these energies meet is where the serpent will have achieved its height. When this uncoiled energy approaches universal love and radiant being, the entity is in a state whereby the harvestability of the entity comes nigh. Questioner: will you recommend a technique of meditation? Ra, I am Ra. No. Questioner: is it better, or shall I say, does it produce more usable results in meditation to leave the mind as blank as possible and let it run down, so to speak, or is it better to focus in meditation on some object or something for concentration? Ra, I am Ra. This shall be the last full query of this work time. Each of the two types of meditation is useful for a particular reason. The passive meditation involving the clearing of the mind, the emptying of the mental jumble which is characteristic of mind-complex activity among your peoples, is efficacious for those whose goal is to achieve an inner silence as a base from which to listen to the Creator. This is an useful and helpful tool and is by far the most generally useful type of meditation as opposed to contemplation or prayer. The type of meditation which may be called visualization has as its goal not that which is contained in the meditation itself. Visualization is the tool of the adept. Those who learn to hold visual images in mind are developing an inner concentrative power that can transcend boredom and discomfort. When this ability has become crystallized in an adept, the adept may then do polarizing in consciousness without external action which can affect a planetary consciousness. This is the reason for the existence of the so-called white magician. Only those wishing to pursue the conscious raising of planetary vibration will find visualization to be a particularly satisfying type of meditation. Contemplation or the consideration in a meditative state of an inspiring image or text is extremely useful also among your peoples, and the faculty of will called praying is also of a potentially helpful nature. Whether it is indeed an helpful activity depends quite totally upon the intentions and objects of the one who prays. May we ask if there are any brief queries at this time? Questioner: I will just ask if there is anything that we may do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact, and if the 2 periods per week are still appropriate. Ra, I am Ra. We request your care in the placement of the neck support for this entity, as it is too often careless. You are conscientious and your alignments are well. The timing, if we may use that expression, of the sessions is basically correct. However, you are to be commended for observing fatigue in the circle and refraining from a working until all were in love, harmony, and vital energy as one being. This is, and will continue to be, most helpful. I leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.